your book, or one of the not passages, but I guess chapters, you in the latest book, you talk about the minority rule, which you had mentioned that you'd love for us to talk about today, and then I pulled out because as I was reading that passages in your book, those passages, it reminded me of something that I wrote as part of a Canadian Senate testimony, which I'd like to read first.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then because it's going to so beautifully fit with what you wrote. So this is for those of you who don't know, I testified in front of the Canadian Senate regarding Bill C-16, the gender identity and gender expression issue. And at one point, I say the following: ongoing governmental efforts are pushing for a gender-neutral society to cater to an extraordinarily small number of non-binary or non-gendered people who feel marginalized at having to provide their biological sex as part of their profiles. This is the tyranny of the minority. 99% of the population should acquiesce to having a default feature of their personhood erased because a few individuals might be inconvenienced by it. That's exactly your minority rule, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. When you have asymmetry, and it works till it doesn't work anymore. And you want me to give the background? You'd like
Yeah,
to
go ahead, go ahead. But some people might not know what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so and the beauty of this is that it can take us into evolutionary territory and into collective versus individuals. I was at I was setting up the barbecue at the Complex System Institute. Okay, and we're inviting people to talk to them about complex system. And I learned one thing, ironically, at that barbecue. A bunch of people from Jerusalem came, all right, to the barbecue to talk about complexity, and they were very, very religious. You can see they were religious. And I was helping with the stand, the lemonade, the food, and I felt, oh boy, because I was among the people who were helping. I said, oh boy, we made a mistake. We don't have kosher food for these people. So I was wondering how to get out of that difficult situation, till one of them, a religious Jew, said, oh, don't worry about it. It's all kosher. The lemonade, don't worry. The drinks, oh, they're going to be kosher. What? Yeah, they're kosher. What do you mean they're kosher? I bought them. No, they're kosher. So we looked at it. At the bottom, there was written kosher. So effectively, 0.3% of the population of the United States is kosher, and close to 100% of soft drinks are. Right. Including Coca-Cola. Why? Because it's very simple. You're Coca-Cola, right? And you're making a drink. You make it kosher. You got to make it kosher, non-kosher, merchandising, this, different truck, this, different shelves. No, what do? You make them all kosher, because I can drink kosher, all right? But the kosher person cannot drink non-kosher.
And hence, that's the asymmetry.
Exactly, very simple asymmetry. And that asymmetry, you start looking at its effects. The asymmetry for kosher drinks is obvious. The cost is small. Sometimes if the cost becomes large, then you don't have that asymmetry. Okay, and you look at the effect of the asymmetry in consumer decision. As someone coming from Mars, looking at the behavior of Americans, he would say, well, people are religious glad kosher in this country, right? From Mars, because they don't know the detail. So there are a lot of things we can infer from it. The first one is that a minority can impose its will on you, okay, if they're intolerant. And the second one is that, and that's harder to discuss now, it's explained at length in the book, it takes a while to get it, that much of ethics comes from the fact that we have laws, it becomes from a few very, very ethical people.
Right. So that goes against the folk intuition that there would have had to be consensus. There would have had to be a majority agreement.
Exactly. Because and this I got it from studying halal. All right. And I noticed that, okay, if a person eats halal, he will not eat non-halal, but the reverse. And then I noticed that, and you know very well, in the Semitic languages, or that Semitic language called Arabic today, that halal means legal.
Right. Halal or haram.
Halal, of course, it means illegal. So I looked at it. I said, well, it's not just food to which this applies. It's also what is permissible, what's not. You see, like theft, mail haram. You see, you can't touch it. Okay, stolen merchandise, you can't touch it. You see, so you understand. So it took me. I started doing experiments, playing with a computer and taking long walks, which is beats the computer, and then thinking about it that as follows. Right? Let us say that we have two methods of poisoning a crowd. Okay, one method is you put a drop in the drink. Either it kills you. All right, the smallest drop kills you. That's a minority rule. In other words, I have this coffee here. If I put cyanide in my coffee, all right, it would be coffee with cyanide. No matter how much coffee I add to it, it will still be. It's a minority rule, same effect. Okay, up to a point, of course. So, and then the other method is you give something that has 50% chance of killing you. Okay, it's stochastic or property, whatever consensus properties, and then you conditional on that. Then you're told that half the people died. You know it's not the minority rule. They're not a cyanide. And if you're told that everybody died or everybody's alive, you know it's a minority rule.
Mazboot. When I was reading that particular chapter, I was thinking, wait a minute, this is what he's talking about is exactly the mechanism I have used to explain the dangers of the slow Islamization of the West. And then lo and behold, as I read further, that's exactly what you talked about. But before I cede the floor to you, in one of my public conversations with your very, very good buddy, very good friend, Sam Harris, be nice, kun latif.
Okay.
I was on his show and I was explaining to him that the key danger when we're discussing immigration doesn't come from the fact that we have to stop a few radical ISIS people. Of course, we have to do that. But the much greater danger when you take a longer temporal view of the issue is that once you slowly Islamize a particular ecosystem, then it's only a matter of time with a very few number of people to then, and then I don't know if in his case I had used the example of Coptics, in Egypt, but there are many cases where a country was not Islamized through the sword, it was shwayye, bit by bit, and that's exactly what you talk about. So maybe you could expand on that.
Okay, so what happened for the minority rule to work, you need to have an open system, not mountainous areas. So and you need to have, say, distribute in the whole country. It's not local. You see, you need to have that kind of thing. It so happened that in the Levant, where we're from, Levant is mountainous and people don't mix. But in Egypt, that's open, it so happened that people intermarried a little bit. And there is a very simple Islamic rule. Once you're in, you can't get out. And if any of the parents is Muslim, the children are Muslim, all right? So it simplifies. So what happens, that very, very slow rate of conversion moves the population from 5% to 95%.
Right.
Maybe 97 now. I mean, they lie about the statistics, but something. So, and all it takes is just a little bit of conversion, not much, a small rate of conversion, because it's not stochastic. It's stochastic maybe, but it's not reversible. You see? So it goes. It's like an absorbent barrier mathematically. So when you back out from the Markov chain, what you get, you realize you need very small probability, very small rate of conversion will give you after 1,300 years. Okay, a majority. For example, that's one. Effectively, Egypt had other things going for it, which is that, and then in my definition of religion, let me start by saying one thing. When you say Islam, I don't hear Islam. But to me, that's not Islam, because I know Shiite Islam is a completely different religion, much more tolerant and not a problem, and it doesn't have these same minority rules. And it's Wahhabi Islam. And effectively, what has happened to Islam over the past 50 years is an Islamization of Islam itself, or Wahhabization. And I remember, you were in Lebanon as a kid, I was in Lebanon as a kid. The way I recognize a Muslim woman from a Christian one is Christian women, particularly like old babushka, old Russian grandmother, the Orthodox, would dress conservatively with a headband. And Muslim women didn't have any, because that was not part of the religion. It was some kind of, so that's the first statement I'd say. The second one is that you have to interpret Islam not as a religion, but as a legal system. And so I have my chapter on the legal system. It's what we say religion is not religion. Christianity is not a legal system. Because when it came, it was built at the time when the Romans had monopoly of law. So the Christianity never really managed to be legal, even when it was a theocracy at some point, and it was never part of the legal system. They had separate courts, whatever it was. Whereas Islam is legal. It's not a religion, it's a legal system. And Judaism was initially a legal system and then became tribal. Islam, the same, but universal. Okay, and you can understand that we know from languages. Deen in Hebrew means law. Deen in Arabic means religion, which means that it's not religion, right? So, and in Aramaic, you don't say deen for religion, you say nomos, which is law, for law, nomos, the Greek word for nomos. So you have to realize what happened with over time is that the Turks really took Islam without really taking much of the law.
Right.
They had their own Qanun and worked with it. So it was a different religion. It's a complete different religion that was Wahhabized by the Saudis over the past 50 years and made intolerant. And the minority rule works right there. If I put a Wahhabi, you put a Wahhabi with 30 non-Wahhabi people.
It's only a matter of time, yeah.
The 31 will behave like the Wahhabi. You see, that is the problem. So there are some tricks. And actually what we have to do the work is not here. It's just weakening Saudi Arabia's aims to change the people within their own religion. That's it.
And I would say when you drew, I love your analysis of the topography of Egypt versus Lebanon, in that because of the unique topography of Lebanon, it doesn't allow the minority rule to take as much of an effect. Now, I will draw an analogy between the topography, and I will argue that the ideological topography in the West of being so open, being so tolerant, in a sense, that creates the flat ground. You don't have mountains of ideological defenses against that which should not be tolerated. So in a sense, we are the Egypt of that dynamic when it comes to the ideological topography. Do you agree?
I more than agree on one point. The EU, that's my problem with the EU. I was trying to explain why in complex system you need pockets. You see? So America is not a country, it's not a republic. America is a federation, where basically the states can do whatever they want. Okay, it's a collection of states. That blocks minority rule. Right. If you universalize, so what happened in Europe, when you have pockets, small states, city-states, each one will have its own rule, the minority rule will not spread.
Right.
But when this thing comes from the top, and now the EU is imposing ideas from you see, that's a problem. It's opening up the system too much, which is, and now you should probably explain it to proponents of Brexit.
I was going to say, you should talk to your boyfriend, Richard Dawkins, about Brexit.
Yeah, my friend. Yeah, he's anti-Brexit, I assume. Yeah, all of the right things. I don't know how you have friends with these people, but anyway, that's a private. Let's keep this to a private conversation, all right?
Yeah, mazboot. Okay, let's move on. I wanted to spend. Well, okay, before we move on to minority rule. So clearly, the dynamics of the minority rule, as applied to, say, the spread of Islam in the West, could just as easily be applied to social justice warrior dynamics on campuses. You have a very, very small minority who are very vocal. And so the optics is that everybody is a rabid social justice warrior on campus, which of course is not the case. Most just want to go about studying their biology and psychology and business, but the few very small can completely grab the narrative, correct? Is that same idea?
Yeah, I'll go even beyond by saying the following. Pretty much everything you see on campus is determined by a small number of individuals, okay, who are costing your parents or the parents thousands of dollars of hard-earned money to just have a diversity officer and all of that thing. People just want to study something technical. It's going to kill universities. But there's one interesting thing with the minority rule, and I'll use the Christians as part of that. You know, halal is neutral, okay, today, because you don't know about it. But as people detect the minority rule, they start rebelling. Right. And there is an actually Arab poet that you'll never read in any Arab country, or so-called members of Arab League country, but we know because he was Christian. And he said, I will not eat sacrificial lamb. Okay, I will not eat meat that is, okay. And then he will say, what? It turned out that they refuse the halal as identity because the Christians actually were force-fed sacrifice of meat
Right.
during the Roman Empire as punishment for Christian, and some of them would die of starvation. Okay, they say, "I'll die of starvation and would not open my lips."
How is that for a costly signal?
That's exactly. So some people have rebelled against minority rule. Minority rule is only works when it's sneaky. As I said, it was a reversible rate of conversion. But the minority rule, if it's too visible, and if you make it visible to people, they automatically rebel.
Well, incidentally, that there's a concept in originally in psychophysics, which then has been applied in marketing. This is the idea of the differential threshold, or the just noticeable difference. So, for example, if I'm a company that's selling candy bar and it costs $1 for 100 grams for the candy bar, I'd like to increase the price. But if I increase the price, that's too salient. So I'd like to then decrease the weight of the candy bar. So if it's at 100 grams, I'd like to find out how much can I reduce it so that most people don't notice the difference, right? So if it's at 100 grams, maybe if I reduce it to 95, nobody can pick up that 5 gram difference. But if I reduce it by 10 grams, everybody will pick it up. So that concept of just noticeable difference is used in marketing when you either want people to notice a change, or if you don't want them to notice a change. And that's exactly what you're saying, because in the case of Islam, well, if we concede this little thing, what's the big deal? So it falls below the just noticeable difference. And then one day you wake up, it's the old parable about the boiling frog, right? One day you wake up, boom, we're 95% Islamic, correct?
No, first of all, Islam, there's a lot of Islams. It's Wahhabi Islam that is
Fair enough.
intolerant. Okay, so this is what I'm saying about the religion. So we have to separate into, unlike your friends, you have to be a little more fine-tuned about what religion, whether people have this religion or that religion. There's Sufi Islam, there's branches of Sunni Islam in Central Asian Islam. So they have a lot of religion. But I would say one thing, that the Shiite Islam, for example, doesn't have these properties.
Right.
They follow the majority. They don't have minority rules.
Right.
Okay. So the minority rule, once visible, irritates people beyond measure.
Right. Which, I mean, to put it in the terms that I said earlier, once it is above the just noticeable difference, the game is up.
Exactly. So, but the minority rule, you have to also be aware, plays on both sides.
Right.
And often you're confused. But one more additional thing is, since you're in consumer marketing, if you watch, let's look at minority rule in this context. Most cars that you buy in America are automatic shift, not stick shift.
Right.
Why is it so? Because at a time when they introduced these things, a family of 4, one person doesn't drive stick shift. They have one car.
Right.
Okay, they're going to buy automatic. And this is how the thing spread.
Very interesting. Maybe 2 more things we could talk about, but we want to keep the people coming, so we'll have many more of these conversations.
Yeah.
First, this is in your past book,